Welcome to F1 on the Rocks. Sit back and pour up your favorite drink. Hey, we're not the ones behind the wheel.
Hello and welcome back to F1 on the Rocks. Here we are, season 2. Max Verstappen has already won the World Driver Championship. Just kidding. You're here with Brian Dauer and Will Smith, and you're here for season 2, episode 1 of F1 on the Rocks. What is up, Will?
Dude, it's insane that we're even here, that we even made it to a season 2 is just an exciting moment in and of itself. But yeah, it was a tough off season. What do you do with your weekends when you can't wake up and watch Formula One? I'm sure a lot of our listeners probably felt the same way.
That is the truth. It is nice to be back.
Yeah.
So now that we are back, and before we get into too much nitty gritty of the episode, welcome back to our existing listeners. Thank you. Welcome to our new listeners. Thank you as well. I want to give just a quick overview, who we are, what we're doing, how we're going to be a little different from last year. So we'll get into that. And then Will's going to kick off the season with a one breath race review, and we'll go right down the line. So Will and I are good buddies. We're both into F1. So last season we said, the hell with it. Let's do it. We started about 6 races into the season, got the pod going. And we were doing your typical race review, kind of break it down, not lap by lap, but we were getting a little bit in depth. And Will and I are huge fans. We read a lot, we watch a lot, but we're not journalists. We're not professionals. We're not traveling to the races more than, maybe one a season. So we're going to change it up a little bit this year. We're not going to do exactly. We're not going to do the super in-depth race review. We're going to assume everybody saw the race and you're into F1 and that's why you're listening. So we're going to talk about the race, but we're not going to hit every single point. So, but if we do miss something that you want to talk about, let us know. And if we're too lengthy, let us know. And we'll get to this kind of at the end as well, too. But we want feedback. We want to interact with our listeners and viewers because we are streaming. And we want to have a good time doing it. So the name of the show is F1 on the Rocks. So we're always going to have a drink to share. And we hope you all have one with us, too. So why don't we start the year off by understanding what you've got in your Rocks class today, Will?
I got called out by one of our listeners before we even started the season. He goes, now, how are you going to do F1 on the Rocks if you're doing a dry March? And I was like, oh no, I am doing a dry March. So I took a note out of the Brian Dauer book from season 1, and that is, I went with Liquid Death sparkling water. Death. Yeah.
Well done.
So if I can't, I'm trying to clean up my act a little bit, do a little less alcohol consumption from time, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Fair enough.
I'm doing for tonight's episode Liquid Death, but I'm assuming you're imbibing. So talk to me about what you're cooking over there on your rocks glass.
Well, I figure it's the start of the season, so I need to be me here. I can't let the listeners think I'm something crazy. So I'm having a Tito's and soda.
A Tito's and soda. Yeah, I think that we maybe just need to make that the official beverage of F1 on the Rocks, and then
That's
everybody can just know, when we get our first official sponsor from an alcohol perspective, it's gonna be Tito's.
It's gonna be Tito's. When we go to Circuit of the Americas this year, we'll stop at the Tito's factory and give a pitch.
Yeah. Hey, you never know. The stranger things have happened. Yeah, spot on with everything that we've done. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for everybody that was around listening last season. So we have to just thank you for that. And a lot of what we're going to try and do this season is lean on you guys, whether it's via text message or whether it's via website submission. We want to hear what you want to talk about. We want to answer questions and kind of dive into some of the things that you're curious about. So we're going to keep it a little more open-ended and a little less specific this year. So, Dauer, it's been, I think, 2-3 months since we've had a chance to catch up. Tell me what's going on with you and the family. I believe a little one had a birthday today.
Yes, you are 100% right. My youngest, my now 4-year-old Quinn, happy birthday. Here's your shout out on the pod.
Happy birthday, Quinn.
So she'll think she's famous. Penelope got a shout out last year, I think, for her birthday. So yes, it's Quinn's 4th birthday today. We've been having a lot of fun, man. We the pool is open. Everybody's got their pool pass, so the neighbors are coming over. We're doing some swimming. We're having a few libations by the pool. It's getting hot in South Florida, so everything is good. Life is good, man. We're we're getting outside and riding the bikes and all that good stuff. How about you?
Good. Yeah. Same. You know, we did a lot of traveling in February, and I'm telling you now on air, but we're gonna be down in your neck of the woods like not next weekend, but the following weekend. So
Nice.
gonna hit some pool, gonna do some beach time up in Melbourne. Really excited about that. And yeah, you know, I took another page out of your book, outside of Liquid Death, and decided to get involved in hockey. So I'm potentially gonna be trying ice hockey. I don't know how this
Hell
is gonna
yeah.
go. But
Nice.
I've got some skates. I picked up some gear off Facebook, and that's been my new hype. My new hype is like, I'm not going to the gym, I'm going to the rink, and we'll see how long that lasts. So check in on
Cheers
me
to
at the end
that.
of last season, and we'll see how that goes.
That's awesome, man. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
So, moving right along, for our new listeners, we like to do a one breath race review. And this sort of started mid season last year, trying to think of something fun and unique to maybe set us apart a little bit from another pod. So, what we do is we alternate. So, next week I'm on the hot seat, but Will's been the gentleman to take it week one. So, he's going to give us a quick, fun, lighthearted review of the race, and he's going to attempt to do it in a single breath. So, when you're ready, I'll give you the old countdown.
This is our claim to fame. This is like our thing. This is what's gonna take F1 on the rocks to, like, you know, the Golden Globes. But yeah, all right, maybe
We're gonna be doing it live in front of drivers at some point.
if I'm lucky. All right, I'm gonna pull it down in front of me so that way I can like do this correctly. All right.
All right, no pressure. First one of the season.
First one of the season. I just gotta get it in one breath, and I wrote a long one again. It's a bad
You
habit.
always do this to yourself.
Okay, here we go. Big deep breath and
Go.
what a start! And hot damn, did Daddy Stroll flex in Bahrain, popping Alonso on his 99th podium with the flick of baby Stroll's wrist. Without my consent, McLaren is tanking the season. Pierre is in the points and Piastri is the sucker. Quite all right, though, for Russell, who's happy to tout bulls will bounce on the top in every race. What do you say to me, Ocon? More penalties for you. Y'all can't deny it. Max was going to drive it to P1 to podium all day.
Oh, well done. You snuck it in.
That was a trickier one.
That was good, man. That was tricky.
Yeah.
You've got some there was some good alliteration in there, but you had some tricky words. I try to write it like my 7-year-old will be able to read it. So I don't sound as eloquent, but
that's fine. It's cool. I write it
Well
so that the folks that caught the race get, you know, the little inside jabs and the pokes, right? And then if you didn't watch the race, it's like I don't really know what happened, but it sounded like a lot of shit happened, you know? Like, okay, that's what happened.
I love it, man. So let's get right into it. So I had a couple interesting, takeaways from the race. Obviously, we know what happened. We know who ended up on the podium and who won the race. Max was start to finish, and Checo in second, and then our boy Alonso snuck onto the podium there with a Leclerc retirement. But first and foremost, we are kings of shitting on Lance Stroll, and I am the leader of that pack, hand in the air. But to be fair to Lance, pretty impressive week. Practice, quali, race. I know he stuck his nose in lap 1, turn 4 on Alonso, and that could have been really bad. But hats off to Lance Stroll. We crap all over him every chance we get, but I think he deserves the credit for doing it with a broken wrist and another fractured wrist and a broken toe and whatever else he had going on. Pretty impressive.
We gotta be careful this season, because if we start to become Lance Stroll fans, everybody from last year is going to be like, "You're just fair weather. It's just because he's driving better now. You like him." He did a good job. We can give him credit for driving when the credit is due. Yeah.
He did. I was impressed. And for all those people who said Mick Schumacher should have kept his seat, I know it's only one race, more really only one qualifying session, but Hulk put it into Q3. Had a shitty race, lost his end plate, a la Kevin Magnussen. So maybe that won't be Magnussen all year long. It'll be the Hulk. But
the curse of the end plate strikes Hulkenberg now.
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting. Someone had one hanging off. It might have been Ocon had one hanging off early in the race. They probably changed that during one of his 10 penalties. But
yeah. Oh man. I just, like, every time you see him go into the pit, you're just like, wait, what? Huh? Wasn't he just there?
him and Lando, they were just battling for who could do more pit stops. So anyway, off of Stroll and Hulkenberg, one thing I did think was funny, first race of the season, everyone's broadcasters are working out the kinks, as is the camera crew. They had a couple moments that was like, I think it was 2020 or 2021 in Monaco, where they were about to show like the one and only overtake, and they went to like a Lance Stroll replay. This was it early in the race when Alonso was making moves. It's like, okay, he's battling Russell. They're coming into turn one. Oh, let's cut to Piastri making a move, or let's go to the pit lane. It's just like, fuck, guys, come on.
You imagine it's someone's toddler that's just there because they couldn't find a babysitter for the day, just kind of mashing some buttons for him. You're like,
right?
Oh, wait, what? No, come back.
Oh man! So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, being early in the season, but hopefully that's not laying the groundwork for what's to come.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Leclerc and obviously that retirement? We thought they worked out those kinks.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on the fence with Ferrari for a few more weeks. I think that this was one of those things, I don't think that we should underestimate them this early in the season, especially when it comes to kind of engine problems that late in the race, a la Red Bull 2022. I mean, if you look at how many engine failures Max and Checo had very early on, they still won the constructors and Max won the drivers. So like, let's be careful just to say that because the Ferrari tanked, in lap, 47, I think, of 51 lap race, that it's all suddenly over. But I do have respect for Leclerc because he pulled it over in a spot where they only needed a virtual safety. And that was nice of him because that would have sucked to be under safety car for the last 5 laps of the race.
Yeah, for sure. That was interesting. Sainz was kind of irrelevant in the race, but I don't know. I guess we'll get more into that. But I think I texted this to you earlier, and I was talking to a buddy at work about it earlier. How fired up would the entire fandom of Formula One be if Red Bull didn't exist? Like, just take Red Bull out of it. Alonso just won the Bahrain GP. There was a Mercedes right behind, or a Ferrari right behind him, then a couple Mercedes, then another Aston. It would just be mayhem. Bottas in an Alpha. Like, I think it's pretty fair to say Red Bull's going to run away with this season, most likely. I mean, I know we're one race in, and I'm being, a Debbie Downer about it, but I'm not, because I'm fired up about everything else, because this is the last decade, right? It's either Mercedes, or Red Bull is running away with it. But imagine if they didn't exist.
Yeah, let the record show for the listeners who aren't watching the live stream that I'm the one wearing the Red Bull hat, but yet Brian is the one going on the Red Bull tangent. Here's my thing with this. It's simply that if you look from Mercedes' perspective, there's a shift, right? They're now in shoes that everybody else has been in for a while. And so there's some adjustments to that. Like Toto is left speechless sometimes. And even when he does speak, he's saying some really irrational things that everybody is kind of like, why are you saying that? Just chill, dude. Like, so I do agree with you though. I think like there has been this thought in my head that it's going to be a long season, but that Red Bull's going to stay out in front. But I still am equally excited about what's happening in the 2nd through 5th spots of the constructors. Absolutely. Because I think 2 through 5 is where the real fun's going to be. Like we're going to see a lot of swapping of places, not only in the constructors, but also in drivers' points, because when one person's car dips out one weekend, the other person's car, like we could very well see Sainz go down with a bad car next weekend, and suddenly Leclerc and Sainz are even with points again. And it makes that whole dynamic of the inner team workings even more difficult. So I'm pumped to see what the season holds for the remainder of the grid, for sure.
Agreed. Couldn't agree more. So how about the rookies? Obviously, we've got Piastri, De Vries, and Logan Sargent. What do you think of those guys?
I liked Logan. I liked Logan's performance in the car. I think he, out of all the rookies, did the best job just showing up and doing what he needed to do. I think when you have like Yuki behind you and your De Vries, and you like want to kind of show yourself, but you also don't want to like bin it into Yuki and take you both out. Like, it was one of those situations where from my standpoint, Logan had the best rookie performance, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I was impressed because, he's on the team because he's got a billionaire family and he's an American, and that's, good for X, Y, and Z. but he didn't seem to drive that way. I mean, he really looked like he belonged, and I think that Williams was obviously a little bit better than people were anticipating as well. But I was pretty impressed with Logan Sargent.
Yeah, 12th place finish, had a couple fast laps towards the end of the race. Like, he wasn't like performing poorly. And in a Williams, you know, like we're just used to seeing Williams be the new bottom of the pack. Like that was nice. That was a nice thing to see happen for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be very nice to see. Hopefully, it stays the case that Williams is actually a midfield team. Mm. And did you see he tied Lando in qualifying?
So he didn't get out of Q1. Yeah, he was just on the cusp. I saw that. I was like, oh, dang it, man.
The exact same time.
Yeah,
that's crazy. But yeah, that was cool. Obviously, Piastri's car went to shit. And speaking of shit, that McLaren might be just really bad this season. Although Lando had some decent laps toward the end of the race. I know he came in 6 or 7 times, and they kept putting, I don't know what it was, air in the system of the car or
pressure.
Whatever.
They were repressurizing the car. I'll go on my McLaren rant in a second when we
got it. All right, we won't hop ahead of that.
And such. Yeah,
and then De Vries sort of got fucked on the strategy. So kind of late in the race, he was on old hards. They didn't bring him in during that VSC when I think they probably should have. So obviously one race in, but I agree. Logan Sargent looked really good.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Who would you put then? Obviously, like we know Alonso won driver of the day because everybody went ham shit ton nuts for him. But who would you put as driver of the day if you couldn't select Alonso as driver of the day?
I think Gasly. And that may be obvious. I mean, he went from 20th to 9th. I don't know how good that Alpine is, obviously, because Ocon had such a shit show. But I think Pierre had a really nice drive, and or Bottas too. I mean, he was up there.
I'll drop the link to this in the blog post afterwards. But this came from Julian Simon Stumps. I believe he might have had some previous experience as an engineer or has worked for a team. But he said, this is the real race. Note the impressive pace from Alonso, but also Gasly in the end. Interesting that Joe pitted at the end for a soft with no chance of securing the top 10. So he went for fastest lap, but he didn't get the point because he was out of the top 10 and nobody else got it either. So the cool thing here is that if you look at this chart and you see after this 41st lap, Gasly just hits this increase on pace.
Wow.
Which just... there's no one else hitting this steep of an incline. The closest incline to that is what Alonso did to get past Sainz and Hamilton. So I think if you look at it purely from a pace perspective, it's like Gasly was putting up numbers like Alonso and Verstappen, just had a slightly less performing car. And I think I agree with you. Driver of the day in my case would also go to Gasly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also thought it was interesting. This is the last thing I'll say, then we can move on. But that they did pit Joe to take that fastest lap point off of Alpine.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, I wonder if that'll come back to make a difference. And who knows? 23 races later, it might.
That's the beauty. And that's, if for the new listeners, go back and listen to episode 1 where you hear like why Brian likes it and why I like F1. And I like it because of the mind games, the chess, I'm fucking with you, but you don't know I'm fucking with you until like 10 races from now, So yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. You got donkey of the day, which I love the terminology that you threw in here. I think it's a new trademark at F1 on the Rocks. Who was the donkey of the day in terms of car performance and driving?
I think, well, all right, I'm going to go Ocon. It might be too much the obvious choice, but it was just comical. Every time he came out after serving a penalty, he got another penalty, and it was first for not lining up in the box correctly, and he just went past the line, or his grid slot, and then it was they started working on the car. This isn't Ocon's fault, but they started working on the car before the penalty was served, in full, and then it was speeding in the pit lane by like 0.1 kph. Like, it was just ridiculous shit, but like, hey, the rule's the rule. You gotta penalize him for it. But that was crazy. What do you think? Who's the donkey of the day in your mind? Team, driver, car, announcer.
It's Ocon. It's Ocon, but because here's why. Like, and my note on this whole thing was Ocon is setting up Pierre for number 1 by just screwing up. Like, he didn't even get a chance to like race wheel to wheel with him. He just didn't even line up on the grid right. Like, dude, you can't even tie your skates right, and you're trying to go out. Like, that's just not going to work. I just don't. So for me, it was Ocon. However, if I'm going to argue on his behalf, which I tend to do, some of it was the responsibility of the team's fault. You can't expect him to be like, "Hey guys, don't touch the car for 5 seconds when they start touching the." Like that's not on him. But I would say Ocon and his team are the donkeys of the day.
Perfect.
That would work for that one. Yeah.
Perfect. So you wanted to talk McLaren.
I do. I have just my McLaren rant is short. It's quick and short, right? I think right out of the gate from preseason testing up until now, we have a lot of risk involved, right? We have what I think is risk on Zach Brown's part to step up and start to take responsibility and stop writing stupid letters and to like kick his team into gear. Cause like you're at the bottom and it's very obvious that there are other teams that are going to outperform you this season. And so for Zach, I think there's this like a job potentially at risk here. Cause like if he continues this downward trend since he stepped up as CEO of McLaren and ends up at the end of this season, like bottom of the barrel, heads are going to roll. And his is probably going to be one of them, you know? But then it also at risk is like, does Lando just get like fed up at a certain point?
Right.
And say like, guys, like, I'm not going to sit around for 3 more years while you figure out the shit with this car. Like, I got to go. Then there's risk with Piastri, who like obviously has no problem. I'm sure whatever contract they wrote for him when he dicked over Alpine, they made sure it was written in blood. But still, like, my concern is simply that if McLaren doesn't start to do something right, like something, there's going to be a lot of like hubbub in the paddock about what's going to happen with them and with their drivers next towards the end of this season. So
for sure, I couldn't agree more. I think their biggest concern is losing Lando, because he's your known quantity, right? And we'll talk about that more in future episodes, because I think there's a lot of interesting dialogue around Lando, when he'll pull the plug, if he'll pull the plug, where will he go, out he's coming in. Like I think there's a ton of interesting stuff to chat about for another day. But you're right, Zach Brown's head could also roll here if this season continues this way.
So we hit the other two things, the Alpine and the Ferrari thing, but the last thing I had was just a Williams versus Haas comparison, right? Like we're coming out of 2022 and we're used to seeing them, 17 through 20, just trying to work their way around and make some sort of success. Who do you think has the juice to make it above the other for the rest of the season? You think Haas has performance that they just haven't dialed in on, and that Williams got lucky this weekend? Or are we seeing like a new Williams that's going to consistently be, 11 through 15, P11 through P15 come the end of a race?
Man, that is a great question, because I think the Haas is going to be similar to like I guess it was like the 2020 Haas, which qualified pretty well. Like they were getting to Q3 with relative frequency or regularity, and then the race would start, and then race trim, they're awful, and they just drop and finish P16, P17. I think that's what we're going to see from Haas this year, because I think that car is just a shittier version of the Ferrari, right? And that was the Ferrari's issue last year. It's good over one lap, but it's hard on the tires and etc. So I think that's what we're going to see from Haas. I think they've got the better driver lineup than Williams. I rate Albon. Obviously Logan Sargent is unknown at this point. He had a good start. So long-winded answer. I'm going to go with Williams. I think that car is better. Haas never develops throughout the year because they just don't spend the cash that way. And I think Williams is going to spend the money and going to continue the development. So I think Williams is going to have more points than Haas at the end of the year. Mark it.
Yeah, they certainly have left us feeling that way after this first race. So like I don't disagree with you. I've always been a fan of Albon, even like from his time at Red Bull. I just I was like, man, the poor guy just has not had a fair shake. Like, let's just get him somewhere where he can do something. So it's nice to see for him and his career as an F1 driver that he's, that the car is performing and giving him an opportunity to shine, and that's really nice. Before we jump to the bullshit, which is our next segment for all the listeners, I literally wrote in the show notes, bullshit. I wanted to just give everybody that's listening for the first time a quick rundown of where we left off last season. And where we left off last season was 2023 predictions. and we did it with the GOAT, the one and only GOAT Smasher. So I think that some of you will laugh when you hear some of these out loud again, but the GOAT put up the winning team was going to be Red Bull by the 19th race. He's actually quoted that by the 19th race, Red Bull will have the constructors locked down. Pretty impressive call. Might actually be true. We'll see. He noted that the winning driver, however, was going to be Charles Leclerc, which again, if you call this kind of curse of Bahrain thing maybe true, there's a chance that Leclerc could end up the driver champion at the end of the year. He said that the biggest surprise was going to be Esteban Ocon in the top 5, which is trending the opposite direction, and that the best rookie was going to be Piastri, which is to be seen maybe if the car makes it past 5 laps.
I love that you're pulling these out.
I know it's great, right? You're gonna love this one. Are you ready, Brian?
Oh boy.
You had the winning team as Mercedes.
Oh no.
And you had the winning driver as Lewis. You had the biggest surprise to be Alonso, best of the rest.
Boom, let's go.
Also known as 7th, and he's currently trending on ranking higher than 7th. So that's a good one. You also had best rookie as Nick DeVries. So you've shifted allegiance to an American rookie, but that's okay. There's still time to become a Nick DeVries fan as we get closer to the season. And this is where things just all
what did yours look like?
I'm all over the fucking. I don't know what I was drinking or smoking that day. I have the winning team as Mercedes, the winning driver as George Russell. The biggest surprise to be second in the constructor, which if it's true and Aston ends up second, that could be the biggest surprise.
That's true.
And I also had Nick DeVries as best rookie. So maybe, we've got some room for Nick DeVries to step up and impress us.
Amen. I'm rooting hard for Nick now.
Mercedes too, if something happens with this aero package that they're releasing sometime in the future.
Yeah, maybe they'll show up in Baku with just normal side pods looking like Red Bull. That would be wild.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that way, because in my head as I was watching the race on Sunday, I'm thinking we're finally seeing the effects of hiring all those people that left Red Bull at Aston Martin.
Yep.
Just simply put, like, you went out, you shelled out a shit ton of money for guys, and you bought a nice factory and a nice wind tunnel, and now we're seeing it in action. And like, it's really just that simple. Like, if you have the budgets and the resources and the people, you're probably going to start to do a lot better than the people that don't have the budgets and the resources and the people.
Agreed. I have a 2023 prediction, and I was thinking about this on the drive home, thinking about the pod and thinking about things, whatever. And I was thinking about Aston Martin, and I'm just thinking, like, man, that exact same thing. All these guys, they paid God knows what to bring these engineers over and aerodynamicists and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how are they under the budget cap? And are they under the budget cap? And is Lawrence Stroll doing some funky shit, like paying them out of some other company, so they're on the books for a $250,000 salary, but he's paying them another $250,000 from some other company? I don't know. That's my 2023 prediction. Something is going to come up with Aston's budget cap.
I will be the first to say on record that politicians tend to do things with dollars in ways that we normal American people that can't. And like, we'll just call it that. In this case, politician equals team principal and or owner.
Exactly.
Anyways, moving on to bullshit, which some of that
My
might have
favorite
sounded
segment.
like bullshit. Yes, this is always a good one. It's one that I just threw together. New listeners, in the bullshit segment, we get a dope ass helmet of the week. It's where I try and find like one of the cooler helmets. This is going back a week. It's your boy Bottas. And he whipped out with his normal his normal artist that does stuff for him this really cool helmet, which had kind of like a cartoon effect, and it was his mullet in his stash. And my thought on this whole thing, Brian, is that you got to give it to him, because like he leaves Mercedes and suddenly he's like has this room to challenge Hammy for like best dressed in the paddock, and has like his own like hipster F1 style, and it's like, dude, I love it. I think it's great.
He left Mercedes and found a personality.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit, Bottas is awesome.
Yeah, it's like we didn't know this guy existed because he was living in the shadows of Hamilton and Toto, you know?
Exactly.
Welcome to reality, Bottas. Nice choice on the helmet. And then I pulled this other thing. This is from Reddit. I'm a big Redditor. For those of you that are new listeners, this is Aston Martin Stonks is what I called it. And there's a tweet from F1 Data Analysis. Is that your guy, or is
That's
that a
my
different
guy? Yeah,
that's your guy, right?
Yep.
What's his name? Do you remember off the top of your head what his name is?
I don't. I guess he's
That's
not
okay.
that much my guy.
Well, no, he is your guy.
Yeah,
He's
I know.
our guy. We're gonna you'll continue to hear stuff from him. We're actually going to work with him to become kind of like more of a featured sponsor on the podcast because we really love the stuff he puts out. But this showed up, his data showed up on Reddit, and it says, not the type of F1 data analysis you would normally get from me. Still data linked to an F1 race. The point evidenced is the instant of the race start. Once the race pace materialized, the value for Aston Martin soared 38% in 5 days and 19% during the race alone. So like Aston Martin's stock is going up because Alonso is destroying it on the track in Bahrain. And that's a really crazy thing to think about, because when we talk about Red Bull and Mercedes, we don't typically tie them to the companies that the brands that they are and what those companies are capable of. We just, oh, that's the sponsor on the car. Like, this is a pretty cool stat when you think about it, because it means that Alonso is literally driving revenue to Aston Martin by being good at his job. That's really cool.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And maybe that's how they're all getting paid. They get like a $250,000 in salary and then $2 million in
bonus.
stock.
Yeah. So I'll link that into
That's
the
cool.
To the blog post and podcast description. We're going to be good about giving you these links in the podcast description, so that way if you are too lazy or don't want to read the blog, in fact, I don't even really know if I'm going to do the blog because it's a lot of extra work, but we'll make sure that that we have like show links, and we'll just put them in there so that it's like 1, 2, 3, and you can click through and look at them as you're listening. That brings us to the fantasy section. This is good stuff, Dauer.
This is great stuff.
This is fantastic stuff, Dauer. One of my favorite segments is the Grid Rivals fantasy segment. Go.
Let me interrupt.
Go.
I set my lineup.
Oh, you did. That's why you actually scored points this time. So for listeners, Dauer is typically not the best at remembering to set this. Did you set it for 5 races so that you have at least 5? Okay,
yep.
Good. Okay.
I put a reminder on my phone for like mid-April. Set your Grid Rivals roster.
That's the smart way to play. Good work. Good on you. This is great. This is especially great this year. Last year we had 6 league participants in the F1 on the Rocks Grid Rivals. This year we have 115. That's awesome. So the shout out goes to Drace and the CEO and co-founder of Grid Rivals. His name is Ross. They are listeners and have built this app to do what it does, which is kind of make it fun. If you're not familiar, Grid Rivals is like a fantasy racing app. It's going to let us kind of flex our metaphorical team principal muscles and try to win cash prizes and compete with friends. So on that note, cash prizes. The announcement is simply this. I personally am sponsoring a 100 United States dollar and official merch shirt grand prize for whoever wins the Grid Rivals 23 season.
You ready for this, Will?
Yeah.
I'm matching it.
He's matching it. The grand prize just went up to $200 US for those of you that might be listening in other countries. It's okay. That conversion may or may not work out to your favor. We might round up. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, we'll get that updated in the Grid Rivals chat so that everybody knows. Each week, we're just going to take like 2 quick minutes, and I'm going to be good about this to run you through some league stats and chat on basic strategy. So the current points leaders this week is Skittles 72 and Serpatius. They tied at 1,073 points, and they only have an 8-point lead. So like,
wow,
hold on to that. Make sure you plan strategically depending on how you locked your drivers in. We don't have a biggest jump up on the board this week because everybody started at 0. So everybody technically had their own biggest jump, which is kind of cool. We technically also didn't have a biggest dive down the board either, because again, we were at 0 and you can't really go negative points. Thank the Lord for that one. But I can give you the lowest score, and I'm not doing this to single this person out. But I will tell you that beneath this person, I think this person might've been ranked like 60. There were a lot of other teams that were around for the beginning of last week that only drafted one driver or didn't set a talent driver or just basically didn't follow the rules. And that's okay. Like, if you don't get to it, you don't get to it. We're not going to judge you. Just we'll send out reminders and try and help you and back you up when we can. Anyways, Washed AF 6969. Gotta love the username. Killing it. managed to scoop up 2 DNFs, one for Ocon and one for Piastri. Really sorry about that. I like where you're going with it. It just didn't work out for you this week, maybe next week.
I've got to give my wife just real quick. I know we're running a little bit long. I've got to give her a quick shout out. She is the queen of like fantasy football names with puns and the whole thing.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've seen her name, but I photoshopped the picture. So we're Bills fans, and the Bills like do this shout song, whatever. So she made her name a little bit louder now. Nikki Lauda.
I saw it.
And I put the Bills hat on Nikki Lauda for the picture.
I saw it.
Incredible. And then she gave me a name for mine. I just stole it, but I'm giving her the copyright. Mine's My Heart Will Grow Jean.
My Heart
will picture of me and Roman.
That's fantastic. It's funny you mentioned that because I saw your profile pic and I was like, look at him flexing with an F1 driver in his profile pic like he's some cool guy. No, if you guys get a chance with the Grid Rivals names, there are some other really clever names in there. So next time you draft your lineup, scroll through and like take a look at some of those.
I think good stuff.
And tag them in the league chat, like, hey, I love your name and let's create some camaraderie in there. Everybody's pretty cool. Well, in other fantasy related items, I did make some bets for this race this week. I swear I'm not a degenerate.
No, you are.
I am a degenerate.
You couldn't send me a screenshot or screenshots of bets. You had to send a video that was scrolling through your bets. It took me a while to realize these are all of your bets. I'm like, what is this video? It kept going.
He needs the context. So the context is I logged into FanDuel. I was texting with another listener, Michael Kohler. I log into FanDuel and I click on the Bahrain GP and there's 19 betting categories. And I'm like, yo, dog, I'm placing a bet in every category. And he was like, huh? And I'm like, shh, quiet. I got to do this. So I placed 19 bets across 19 individual categories for a total of $40 invested. And I use the word invested purposefully because we all know it was an investment, right? I won back $34.79 for a total loss of, what is that? $5.21. That's quick math.
Very
that sounds
good.
about right.
Okay.
Now, here's the deal. I had some good highlights in there, though. I made some picks that were like, as I'm picking them, I'm like, this is a total like shot in the dark. We'll see what happens. The first one was winning margin over 10 seconds. Like, you don't know that is going to happen, but if you have to kind of maybe guess, you're like, okay, they could pull that off, right? But like, It was like 20 seconds or 30 seconds. It was something crazy. So I won good on that one. I also had a max double, which was fastest qualifier and race winner. That was a pretty good win. The biggest bet win was a $2 bet for $13 in grand prizes. And that was McLaren to retire first. Because I saw him having all the brake troubles and shit in preseason testing. And I was like, McLaren might go down first. And sure enough, they did.
I like your style, Will.
I did my best. I'm going to probably not bet that much on the next race because I can only probably pull off that like smaller deficit one more time before I just lose all of it. So
you just got to put it all in one bet.
Yeah.
You got to get like that, the McLaren retired, just put the $40 on there and
that would have been
make it 300.
Yeah, that would have been the moneymaker for sure. Yep. All right. Well, then next week,
go to the casino 3-4 days a week, see what happens.
Don't tempt me. Do not tempt me because I will. Well, next week I'll just screen capture all 19 betting categories, win a video, send them to you, and say which one should we put $40 on.
Yes, perfect.
That's how.
Which one should we put the $100 we said we'd give to the Grid Rivals guy?
Well, if we were really smart, what we would do is we'd put the $100 on it for the Grid Rivals person. And then if it loses, be like, sorry, you're out. But if it wins, we'd be like, sorry, you're out. We're not, you can't have all of it. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. We would never. We're honest folks. We're honest folks here. Well, we're thankful for you guys tuning into the first episode. It's going to be a fun season. We're going to keep doing some fun stuff. Like I said, we want to engage with you. We want to know if you would continue listening if we started to include some ads to support the cost of running the podcast. When we started this a year ago, it was like, no, we're not going to do that because it's just like, we don't really need to, we don't want to. But like I've been kind of footing the bill and Brian's been footing the bill quite a bit. And if you guys are open to it, we might consider doing it. So we'd like your feedback. We want to hear from you. If you have an opinion on this, send us a form, go to the website, send us a form and be like, hey, it really wouldn't bother me. Try to keep it to 3 ads or something like that. Or, hey, we really like it the way it is. We can get from top to bottom and be on with our day. Please don't do that. And that's totally fine too. We totally get it. We're not so attached to it. We're just trying to help ourselves a little bit where we can.
Agreed. And what we really want the most is to tell a couple friends. right? And that's how I find some of the best podcasts I like, just shooting the shit with folks around the water cooler at work or whatever. If you enjoy it, if you don't enjoy it, just pretend you do when you talk to a couple friends. But seriously, that is the best. Tell a couple buddies who are into F1, hey, check us out, and that's what moves the needle for us.
You are in charge tonight, Brian. Give us the breakdown on how people can find us and share us and talk about us with their significant others, dogs, children, and fellow neighborhood friends.
Yep, all of the above. Follow us on Twitter at F1 on the Rocks. I'm hilarious on Twitter.
You have good Twitter skills. I'll be honest. I'm very bad with Twitter.
I can hit retweet. Every now and then I have a decent comment or reply to something. Most of the other times I just hit the like button.
Well, we need some more engagement. Go everybody go on Twitter and send a sarcastic thing at Brian to challenge him, like people do with the Wendy's Twitter, and see if you can throw him off his game. Let's make that a Twitter challenge.
Ryanair, my favorite Twitter handle. Check it out. Check out F1 on the Rocks first, and then Ryanair. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitch. Watch us live. We've got a Patreon. Support us on Patreon. We've got 2 patrons, I think. One is
down to zero. So
one's my mom.
We're trying to boot it back up again, which is why we're talking about it here. It'll be linked on the website and in the podcast episode. If you just want to do like $2 or $5, like every little bit helps,
Every little bit helps. They'll keep the ads out of the show. So my mom is a patron of ours, and I saw her last week, and she's like, my credit card got stolen, so I've got to get a new card and log back onto Patreon. I'm like, Jesus, Mom, like don't worry about it. Like you've got your credit card's stolen. Patreon should not be the first thing you re-up.
There's so many other things that your card's linked to, but she's worried about you, Brian. She needs to get us. We got to. She takes care of us, and for that, all we can do is thank her. Our listeners take care of us, and all that we can do is say thank you, guys. It was great having you. We'll see you next week. Until next time, folks, this is F1 on the Rocks, and we love you.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to F1 on the Rocks. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe now and watch for updates at f1ontherocks.com and on social at F1 on the Rocks.
Woo!